From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and concerned citizens making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos, Assistant Professor in Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture.
Beekeeping has become quite a technical and complicated affair over the last few years, and particularly if you're a commercial beekeeper, you need to stay on top of the latest developments in crop systems, new and innovative ways to control varroa mites, disease management, nutritional supplements. The list goes on. And to bridge the gap, Canadian provinces have come up with this innovative solution. They're called tech transfer teams. They're often collaborations between the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Beekeeping Association. And these tech transfer teams really focus on bringing innovation to the industry in a way that's easily digestible and easily operationalized. And this is what's recently happened in the province of British Columbia, just north of us here in Oregon. Dr. Nuria Morfin is the brand new tech transfer lead for the British Columbia Honey Producers Association. I had the great opportunity to catch up with her to hear about this brand new program, and also for those of us in Oregon to get a little glimpse into sort of what beekeeping in British Columbia is like and some of the challenges that they're experiencing there. So without further ado, let's head up to British Columbia to talk with Dr. Nuria Morfin this week on pollination. Well, I'm so excited this episode to travel up the I-5. I don't know what it becomes when it's in British Columbia, but up to British Columbia to meet the brand new lead of the BC Tech Transfer Program, Nuria Morfin. Welcome to Pollination.
Thank you, Andoni, for the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm so excited. I know it's been a long time, and I think the BC beekeepers have watched various other provinces around Canada have these new tech transfer positions come into place. And, it's really wonderful to see across the border this new position. And now, I guess just to back it up, I want to get to what the tech transfer position is. But you've been working with bees for a while. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how did you get into bees in the first place? And what were you doing before you showed up in the Lower Mainland?
Sounds good. Thank you. So I guess like many, I never thought I was going to end up working with bees, but my professional path just led me to that. So I studied veterinary medicine at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Oh. And we have this class on honeybee biology and apiculture right at the end of this career of one of the last semesters. And I took the course. It was the professor was Dr. Sosaya, which is very well recognized for his studies with Africanized bees in Mexico. And it just got my attention. And he was so passionate about the topic. He traveled a lot. He knew so many things about honeybees and honeybee biology. And I thought it would be a great idea to have my own beekeeping business while finishing university and working on my other project, which at the moment was a small animal clinic. I was very involved in a humane society and working clinic. So I convinced some friends to start a beekeeping business. We just took a course. We knew nothing about honeybees, and we decided to buy these bees that were highly defensive, Africanized, awful to work. So we moved them to the dry tropics of Mexico. So if close to Acapulco, people have been there. So it was a great experience. I learned a lot the hard way. I learned that management is important and that breeding and genetics are very important when keeping bees and other livestock. one day we were working, trying to feed the bees, and I had so many bees on me, so many stings in my wrists, my ankles, my neck, and it was just like the cartoons, and just dropped my hive tool. It was hot, dry, stressful day for bees and humans. I just dropped the hive tool and I started running towards the river. And I was not the only one. My friends were behind me, just like disappearing. So at the end, we donated the hives to the university, and I decided to keep working on bees and start researching. So I did my master's, and I work with neotropical bees for pollination services. And then later on, when I was finishing my undergrad, we had to do this community service as part of the university program, federal funded universities. We have to do that. So I work with as an extensionist, being a link between the university and the beekeepers in Mexico. So it was a great opportunity to have this experience of connecting with the industry and being that link between both worlds. And later on, I had the chance to do an internship at the Honeybee Research Center, University of Guelph, with Ernesto Guzman. Mm-hmm. So I knew the work of Dr. Guzman. He was very well known in Mexico for his projects, a very successful breeding program to reduce defensive behavior in Africanized bees and increase honey production. So it was very exciting to go and work with him. And I joined him there, and later on, I decided to do my PhD with him as well. And I continued that path with honeybees.
So you've had both, I think about your experiences in Mexico, but also in Canada. Those are the two hotbeds of kind of like apicultural work. I was thinking Guelph, and specifically, goes back such a long history of apicultural research at Guelph. So you've got everything but the U.S. You're sort of on both sides. Have that broad experience from northern to southern beekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that first experience didn't dissuade you, and it really must be a testament to your character to have stung your way into the river and still come back. You really love bees.
Oh, yeah. And I have so many stories. I had no idea about bees or anything. So I decided to store my boxes in my mom's house in the backyard when I was studying. And of course, a swarm got in. My mom called me. I drove back and don't do anything, don't go out. And there were bees all over the place. My family got stung, but now only anecdotes, nothing bad happened, but it was a good learning experience.
I'm really impressed that you have those experiences, though, because in the lower mainland where you work, there are a lot of people who are getting to beekeeping for the first time that don't have facilities, don't have a pickup truck. They just have maybe a Tesla. And they live in an apartment and they have to make it work. And there is, you've clearly had to navigate all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess we all have our own experiences, but it's always good to have someone that has been there and to tell you where to go and how to do things, just facilitate things a little bit.
Well, that's fantastic. And so you are now, I also really love the way that you describe this. Your background is not, although you have a PhD, at one of the most prestigious apiculture universities in the world, you've also had this connection with industry, with actually doing beekeeping through the vet school, having an extension experience. And I guess, that sets this up really well to thinking about this position in British Columbia. And for our listeners in the U.S., the idea of a tech transfer program may be unfamiliar. But this tech transfer program is different from a program that's based in the Ministry of Agriculture. It's different from one that's based in the university. How would you describe what the tech transfer programs are?
For sure. So I recently had to present and introduce the program to different associations and clubs. So I was doing some reading and I bumped into very interesting articles or references. So apparently the tech transfer programs go back to the Industrial Revolution. And there were all this boom of innovations, new science, new technologies, and they were trying to figure out how to transfer those into the industry and make and grow. So those were the beginnings of the TTPs, or tech transfer programs. So we're basically a link between basic research and the industry. So we communicate with both. We see what the industry needs, which is always being challenged by the market, by stressors, by a lot of different things. For example, with the beekeeping industry, with new pests and diseases, borders being closed or open, all this pressure of the market. So we try to find or to identify the difficulties or challenges that they are facing, and trying to look at solutions through research, innovation, and knowledge transfer. And I like to think that we're bilingual, that we talk research and we also talk industry. The particularity about the TTPs for the beekeeping industry in Canada is that we are not linked by, or we're not associated to a university or a government. We are part of the Beekeeping Association. So we are very industry focused. Although we are funded by the Ministry of Agriculture, our mandate, or what we do, is based on what the industry needs, based on the beekeepers.
Okay, that's an amazing model, and sounds like one that you're really well suited with. And I know you've only been in BC for a few months. You're barely on the ground, but just in terms of your first impressions, what excites you about BC beekeeping? What's different from Mexico or Ontario? What are your first impressions?
The first impressions, I was very excited to see how eager the beekeepers were to start the program. So they were reaching out, having all these ideas, very cooperative, just trying to help support the program. So that said a lot about the beekeepers and the industry, and how eager they are to grow and to overcome the challenges that they are facing. So that was the first impression. The other one was, I thought, well, the first thing I have to do is understand BC and the ecosystem, the environment, the geography, and it's just impressive what the province gives. Just give me one sec. There are 8 agricultural regions. So when I'm trying to plan a program or a project, I have to think of 8 different parts of BC that are very different. So, for example, the Lower Mainland, you have these short winters, very long beekeeping season with this amazing weather and all this agriculture happening. But then if you move a little bit, you have dry, and then you move up and there's these prairies and the harsh winters, more similar to Ontario, I guess. So it's very rich, very diverse, and the management as consequence is different. And of course, the challenges that the beekeepers are facing are also different. And it was very surprising as well that beekeepers in different regions, they communicate a lot, or that's the impression that they give me. They communicate and they share what they are living. So I thought that was a very good community as well.
Yeah, it's always been my impression in BC as well, is that beekeepers, are really cover a lot of area. I mean, at the time when I was there, I remember there was still beekeeping operations up in the BC Peace. Mm-hmm. And so that's thousands of kilometers, that separate beekeepers. I think like in Oregon, there's, maybe it's not clearly as large a scale, a spatial scale, a geographic scale where beekeeping takes place. But I was always impressed by, I remember the one thing I always remember about BC is the BC Honey Producers Association meeting, unlike any other meeting I know, rotates between the regions. Like there's it moves up to Dawson Creek, it moves to, to Kamloops, it always moves around. And I think it's, I think the members really acknowledge that space and are like, we're going to stay together. Or
yeah, of course. And I see, well, I'm trying to listen and understand what's happening. And I see all these conversations between them, like how are you doing in the Caribou? How are things in the Kootenays? And all this sharing of information and experiences. It's enriching.
Well, as you've had those initial conversations, and I imagine that's your first year is kind of full of kind of information gathering. What are you learning about the challenges that BC beekeepers are facing? And, what are some of the first problems that you sort of anticipate tackling?
Yes, so that's a great question. And I'm just listening, trying to understand. And we had a very good conversation with beekeepers, stakeholders, researchers from different universities in BC and Alberta joined the conversation, as well as government reps and stakeholders in general. And some of the challenges that I took notes were on the market and the economy of beekeeping. Maybe working a little bit in the dark. Does it make sense? What is the market forecast? Is it profitable to have bees for pollination services? Is it profitable to try to produce queens or not? Other challenges is high overwinter mortality. That's a huge challenge. And some of them are not unique to BC. Some challenges are shared with other provinces and other parts of the world. Mostly, but not limited to Varroa destructor, European foul brood, which has been linked to bees used for pollination services of blueberries. Then we have environmental stressors, lack of forage, agrochemicals, droughts, floods, and all these things that add up, unpredictable springs, such as this one, for example. Urbanization, mostly for the lower mainland. So this competition between agriculture and people trying to grow, and this limited space that they have both to grow, and this competition, and sometimes maybe a misunderstanding of both worlds. That's another challenge. And also another one that it might be seen as a challenge, but also as an opportunity, is that 97% of the beekeepers in BC are small-scale beekeepers. So there's a lot of pressure for these 3%, 130 beekeepers, to cover all this huge demand for pollination services, beekeeping services, and products for the province.
Okay, so that you've got got these kind of issues that pertain everywhere, but I guess some of these issues are almost amplified in a place like I was thinking about the Lower Mainland. It's such a the urban rural interface just really is so dynamic that urban area is growing, and you can have a huge blueberry farm right on the side of a development. Must create all sorts of constraints on being able to deal with some of these problems. It's not as though you have like Saskatchewan, where there's area that could be planted to something. You really have a lot of constraints to work with, a real challenging set of problems.
Yes, and yeah, what you mentioned exactly, and I noted that. So we moved here, we started walking, just knowing the area, and you're like in this like very urbanized environment, and you turn it like, wait, are those berries? Like this is. It's they are very close together in the Lower Mainland, for sure.
Which I suppose also is connected to the whole issue of a lot of small scale beekeepers, that these things go hand in hand, and it does present a puzzle for the future for pollination of BC crops, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how? I'm really looking forward to following up. I think you have so many similar issues to Oregon, and so many ideas came to mind for collaboration. We have, for example, we run into beekeeper conflicts with subdivisions. Happens all the time. I'm sure you're going to hear about them in BC, and coming up with some way to provide homeowners with, how do you get bee poop off your car, and all of those things, just to sort of like lessen the conflict. Those are a tricky set of problems, and we have them too. So I'm looking forward to working with you on them.
Absolutely.
Well, but to back right up, how was this position created? So you mentioned earlier that this is a collaborative, a collaboration. Well, no, it's not even a collab. The ministry provides funding, but really, the people who you answer to is the BC honey producers. Can you tell us a little bit how this came together? How long had this position been thought of? What was the back history behind the position?
So, as you mentioned before, these technology transfer programs started in Canada in the 90s. So, Ontario was one of the first provinces to have a technology transfer program, and it worked very well. One of the main objectives was to start a breeding program, and it was very focused on Acarapis woody, the tracheal mite, and overcoming all these challenges that beekeepers at the time were facing. And some of them are still facing the same things. And then this was replicated in other provinces, so Saskatchewan, Quebec, the Atlantic provinces, and most recently Alberta, Manitoba, and this year, 2021, British Columbia. And I think it was as a response to the difficulties and the needs of the beekeeping industry. So I think these challenges created this pressure of having some support and assistance to help them overcome this. It's not that we're going to do all the work, of course. There's a lot of people involved. When I think of all the people that are behind this program, it's just impressive what it needs to happen to make projects or things go. And it's a slow process, and we have to think long term. But one of I hope I don't miss anyone, but there were a lot of people that worked for many years to design and to push to have a technology transfer program, including Heather Ego, Jeff Lee, Kerry Clark, Diane Dunway, Dan Mosson, Ron. A lot of people work and envision this program. And also BC had a type of technology transfer program in the 90s. And for some reason or other...
Kerry Clark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kerry was kind of a tech transfer person, I suppose, at the time.
Yeah. But it worked for some years, and then, I don't know, some things happened and it stopped. But they recognized the value of having a TTP in the province, so they pushed for this, and we're funded by the Ministry of Agriculture, and recently we got support from other funding sources, including other beekeeping associations such as the Floyd Wigler Grant, Project Apis M, the Northern Development Initiative Trust through BC Hydro. So this is good to have because it tells us that what we're doing has value for the beekeepers in the province, but impact in other parts of North America.
I was just that is very impressive, and it's the amount of work that has been done by members of the association over a period of time to bring this together, and the kind of vision is really remarkable. But I am reminded of mentioning the first effort with Kerry Clark. I think it was the foundation of most of the formic acid work that was done. Like, it really, with a small investment at the time, a whole lot of great work was provided to beekeepers that benefited everybody across North America. So I can't underestimate how important this is and how wonderful it is to have, at least in the Pacific Northwest region now, a tech transfer team. I think it's going to really benefit us all. I got some questions I want to ask all my guests, but before that, is there anything else that you've noticed about beekeeping in BC that, would be weird to listeners outside the province, that, they do things kind of funny? Is there anything that you've noticed?
This will be my first beekeeping season, so I'll make notes and document any quirky things that they do. So far, I have nothing. As I mentioned before, things that people should know about the province, I guess it's diversity, how diverse it is, how rich it is, and how supportive the beekeeping industry and the community has been. I think those are the main things that I would note.
Wonderful. Well, here, let's take a quick break. I've got 3 questions I ask all my guests. I'm so excited. You're the first tech transfer person to answer these questions. So a first for pollination. Okay, we'll be back in a second. Okay, we are back. So we have 3 questions. First one is, do you have a book recommendation for our listeners?
So I thought about 3 books. One of them is The Biology of the Honeybee by Mark Wilson.
Perfect.
It was the first book that I got when I was in my undergrad. And it has always been next to me in my desk. And I just keep going back to that book. There are other ones on honeybee biology that I think are very good, like the Honeybee Veterinary Medicine by Vidal Naquet.
Oh.
But the Honeybee Biology by Mark Winston is still my to-go book. So, and then I thought about another one. I was also in my early stages, just discovering bees and new social organisms. My background was on medicine, so I had to catch up on biology when I started with bees. And a professor, Daniel Prieto, he introduced me to The Ant and the Sociobiologist by Pierre Jason. And it was a very clear, nice introduction to this world. So I like that book.
What was the title of the book again?
The Ant and the Sociobiologist.
The Ant and the Sociobiologist?
Yes, and it gives a very nice introduction to social organisms, E.O. Wilson, Hamilton, and all this world of social insects.
Oh, fascinating. What a great... Okay, but you said 3 books.
And then the other one, I recently got this book, and it's a fictional book. It's a novel, and it's called The Murmur of Bees, and it's inspired on bees, but has absolutely nothing to do with honeybee biology. But I really enjoy that, and it gives you another, I guess, human aspect interpretation of bees in our culture. So I also enjoyed that book.
Those are wonderful suggestions, and we'll link them below on the show notes. I'm going to certainly pick those up. The next question is, you've been working with bees for a long time in many different situations. Do you have a go-to tool that you really rely on?
Like go-to tool, you mean like a tool for beekeeping?
It could be anything. We've had people say, we had Francis Ratnieks on episode number 1, way back, and he said it was his eyes. And,
okay.
And then we had and Joe Wilson, he makes his own aerial insect nets out of a golf club. So that gives you a sense.
Okay. Then I'll go with my first thought. My first thought was like, what I just have to remember to bring with me is the bee belt. So Paul Kelly from the University of Guelph, he designed this leather belt that has a magnet. So you can put your hive tool, and it has the perfect pockets for a queen cage, a marker, a clipper for the wings, and it's just perfect. And I think I saved a lot of money by not losing my hive tool every time I go to the field.
You know, the staff at the apiculture lab at OSU all have Kelly bee belts. And I just the other day, I was out doing some beekeeping, and I had a little nuke, just a little cluster of bees with a queen. And I was like, if I only had a queen cage, I could, bulk this up, and I didn't have one.
There you go.
Fantastic. Well, the last question we have, do you have a favorite pollinator species? And I know you've worked a lot with apis, but you've also worked with other species. Is there a favorite?
So I thought about, it would be unfair to not mention honeybees because they just changed my professional life and steer my life towards a different path. So Apis mellifera, I would say any strain that is gentle, that would be my preferred one. So I had the chance to work with buckfast bees at the University of Guelph, and I love them. They are gentle, they overwinter well, they are good with honey production. So I think those would be because
there is a buckfast breeding program that's been long-standing in Ontario.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I always, I really it's funny being in the United States now. I was always used to being in Western Canada, having restricted queen supply. Of course, British Columbia was an exception because you have these wonderful bee breeders in British Columbia. But I didn't have a lot of selection, but now I'm down here. It's like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. But I don't know if there are buckfast breeders in the United States, to be honest. There probably is some, and I should seek them out. Now that you've told me this, I'm going to ante up,
try them out,
pay the extra money and get myself some buckfast. Well, it's been a real delight having you on the show. I'm really excited to having you back again. Good luck on your position. BC is really fortunate to have you, and we're really excited to see your progress over the next few years.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much for listening. The show is produced by Quinn Sin Neal, who's a student here at OSU in the New Media Communications program, and the show wouldn't even be possible without the support of the Oregon Legislature, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, and Western SARE. Show notes with links mentioned on each episode are available on the website, which is at pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's several ways to connect with me. The first one is you can visit the website and leave an episode-specific comment. You can suggest a future guest or topic, or ask a question that could be featured in a future episode. But you can do the same things on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by visiting the Oregon Bee Project. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.